Hey everyone, and welcome back to the fourth quarter pod where we're gonna discuss some very spicy topics today. But before we get into that, Jake, how you doing? How's your last weekend for those of you in Sydney, before we have our freedoms return on Monday?
Well, first answer to your questions, I'm very good, thanks, Luca, as always. And second, yes, it's very exciting times for Sydney. I haven't got my second vax yet, so I'll have the delayed
A little
Freedom
delayed.
Day, as they like to call it. But
It's just parole.
yeah,
It's not full freedom. We call it parole.
exactly. So I'll just be outdoor running to keep my exercise in while everyone hits the gym again, which is pretty exciting. And looking forward to basketball again, finally.
Yeah,
And when I say
exactly.
basketball, us playing
Us,
basketball.
yeah, no, totally. And there's a reason why I ask you, because I think it's a pretty prudent conversation to have, because it's not just us that's getting to some sort of point with this whole COVID situation, vaccinations, but we also have a lot of drama unfolding at the same time in the NBA. And I know we touched on the topic a little bit in last week's pod, but aside from the whole Ben Simmons drama, the kind of lasting kind of question mark on the league right now is everything to do with vaccinations. And one, like the center of it being Kyrie Irving, and what he's going to do. And we've seen reports that there's, been like rumors going around of him saying how the vaccination is an attempt to control black people in some way, shape, or form, and that's finding itself through locker rooms in the NBA. And it's actually, I feel like that kind of narrative is quite like dangerous. Just it's really strange, and so I thought, I mean, we both agreed that it was prudent to talk about this topic because there's a whole lot going on with Kyrie at the center of it. And I just wanted to get your thoughts specifically on, everything going around, like just broadly, before we get into some more specific things with the vaccinations.
A lot of ways I could take that, but I think it's basically coming to a head. Everyone's coming around to the fact, or most people who are anti-vaxxers are coming around to the fact that if you want to play NBA basketball, you need to be
Mm.
vaccinated. So this is purely a Kyrie Irving thing now, and something that respectfully I don't want to talk about for too long because he's ridiculous. The claims he makes and the assertions that he places on things such as, like you said, this is a way to, what was the comment, to enslave black people or
Something
to,
like that. Like I can get the
yeah.
exact quote up, but it was ridiculous.
He got a slight W. I read somewhere that he can train in Brooklyn because it's a private
I
facility.
did. Yep.
But I'm not sure how much further they're going to bend for him and allow him to,
It was it
yeah,
was
be unvaccinated.
a satanic scheme to connect black people to a master computer.
Bro, like I'm all for people having alternative ideas and trying to see things for what they are, but yeah, look, if he's right, there's 6.6 or 7.6 billion people on Earth who are wrong, and he's the right one. So we'll just have to wait and see. But broadly, I think this will tie into our first topic. So I'll keep my takes in the chamber.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, pretty much what we want to talk about here now is Andrew Wiggins. So Wiggins decides to get the vaccine, um, and the way he kind of described it when questioned about it was that he kind of felt like he had to continue his NBA career, that his options were to get vaccinated or not play in the NBA. So I wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit on kind of what you think the Andrew Wiggins situation means for, yeah, generally, other people coming around, and also maybe a more personal stance on what Wiggins said there.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the longer COVID's around, the longer vaccines have been out, the more people that have taken them, it's created a little bit more social proof and recognition.
Mm.
Like when they originally came out, there was a lot more people who were like, "Is this going to hurt me? Do I need this? What are the long-term effects?" But when you see billions, literally billions of people taking it, and then your career, which is to play basketball professionally and get paid millions of dollars to do so, is at jeopardy if you don't take a vaccination. I just think people are accepting that. It's kind of like what I spoke about 2 weeks ago on a smaller scale. I won't be able to play organized competitive sport with my friends. I won't be able to go overseas and quite frankly, life is there to be lived, you know? So you just have to come to a conclusion or die on a hill and wait to be resuscitated one day if you're eventually right and you can
Yeah.
do these things unvaccinated. So I think Andrew Wiggins was very reasonable in his
Mm.
conclusion. And I think it's very good signs for the Golden State Warriors because he's probably their first preference small forward. I on a side note related to this, I really like Draymond Green being the ultimate contrarian, basically saying, I don't care if he does or doesn't get vaccinated, which is just, you know, Draymond in his prime in terms of his off-court takes and commentary. So I think Wiggins probably just thought, well, fuck, you know, no one really cares. Like, well, people care, but like my boys want me to play and we want to win
Yeah.
a championship or run deep in the playoffs. So if I want to make $37 million a year or whatever it is his contract is, I got to get vaccinated. So I just think cooler heads prevailed and logical minds prevailed in this case.
Yeah, no, I think I completely agree with everything that you say there. And the other thing that I kind of like is that he touched on the fact that he's cognizant of the reality that, you know, who knows what, you know, the long-term effects of everything are. But at the same time, it's one of those things where it's like, is it something worth worrying about, you know, immediately? Like, you know, I don't think anybody thinks that, you know, in 10 years from now, we're all going to turn into zombies or whatever, but, you know, maybe something pops up. But as you say, like he's cool, calm, collected. He knows, I think, like what the effects are, what the effects could be, like what his beliefs are. But then ultimately came to that realization that if he wants to, you know, do what he continues to do, like play basketball and make millions, while, you know, people all around the world that, you know, don't have that luxury are also getting this vaccine, that, you know, he came to it from that decision. But
Yeah.
slightly off topic, but also on topic, but a different take here, I guess. So we talk about Wiggins in the realm of like, okay, like I got to this point and I realized if I want to play basketball, I got to take it, right? And then you have a slightly different angle, which is more the broader, like, okay, how is what I'm doing affecting, you know, the greater good, society at large, you know, how I'm protecting, you know, immunocompromised people that can't get the vaccine, you know, just people that aren't able to actually protect themselves as well. Like a large reason why we do this is for that as well. And the reason I bring that up is because there's been another, I guess, hot debate, which is when LeBron was questioned about, you know, the vaccine and his stance, he came up with saying, you know, I don't really care, like, you know, what other people do. I'm not going to tell them what to do with their bodies. This is like, he kind of described it as something specifically related to individuals. And Kanter came out and kind of put him on blast for that in the media. But before we get to Kanter, like, just wanted to start chatting on, you know, LeBron's comments and what your takes on that are, and then we can kind of maybe dissect Kanter's point of view as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first and foremost, I watched that interview on YouTube, the replay, and LeBron's always very impressive is probably the word I'd use in press conferences because he's been doing this for so long and he's a smart guy. And when the reporter basically asked him, you've had your vaccine, it's seemingly that the Lakers are all going to be fully vaccinated before the first game. What would your position be now for other players who haven't been vaccinated? And as you sort of briefly mentioned, Luka, he is not one to advocate it to other people. I'll read you a quick quote. This is LeBron. I know I was very skeptical about it all, but after doing my research and things of that nature, I felt like it was best suited not only for me, but for my family and for my friends. James said, emphasizing he was not talking about other people and what they should do. James demurred when asked if he didn't feel the issue was important enough for someone of his stature to advocate for others to get vaccinated. LeBron, and quote, we're talking about individuals' bodies. We're not talking about someone's political, racist, or police brutality or things of that nature. We're talking about people's bodies and well-being. So LeBron technically isn't wrong in what he's saying in the fact of it's an individual choice, and the way he's worded it protects him from major criticism in the sense of he didn't say anything that crazy. But if you read between the lines, especially considering LeBron is under that more than an athlete umbrella, he's more than willing to speak on political issues, you know, whether it be Trump or advocating for Hillary when she was trying to get into office, and talking about the George Floyd situation with absolute commentary, like he knows everything. And again, I'm not trying to talk about that because I don't know anything, but what I'm trying to say is he has a lot of confidence and a lot of willingness to just put himself out there. But when it came to something like this, he sort of shied away from it. So I'll save the rest of my takes for the Kanter segment when we go into that. But I think LeBron's being a little bit cheeky, very similar to when China and Daryl Morey had their tiff about Morey commenting on political issues, and LeBron being tight-lipped because he knew that he's a Nike brand athlete, and he's making hundreds of millions of dollars off China. So I do feel like LeBron is a little bit of a cherry picker. But at the end of the day, he is just an athlete, even though his brand is more than an athlete. So it's a bit hard to criticize him too much, even though he's trying to be all encompassing.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and I hear where you're coming from with that angle. But yeah, as I kind of alluded to, with the way I kind of, it was probably a slightly biased question, was that I think there's an angle there as well that, and I guess coming over to Kanter, and I watched Kanter's response as well, and an element of the reason we do this is not purely just like, you know, we are yes, in fact, talking about people's bodies. We're talking about your body, mine, and whoever else decides to get the vaccine. But the reason we do that is not political, while unfortunately in many cases it has been made one. But that's because things are always made political, because politics always finds its way into everything. But casting that aside, the reason we do a lot of it is because, as you and LeBron says it himself. He says, I'm going to read the quote here. But after doing my research and things of that nature, I felt it was best suited for not only me, but for my family or for my friends. He's literally talking about it from the perspective of other people. He's not saying that he did it because he felt like it was the best choice just for him and just for him to be able to play basketball. He's acknowledging the fact that what he did was to help protect his family, protect his friends, and the way I see it, it makes sense that he's cognizant of the fact that what he does affects all the people around him. Like, obviously, yes, immediately his friends and family, but it extends far beyond that. The players that he plays with, the training staff, everybody that he interacts with, fans. You know, if he's vaccinated, he can obviously protect. You know, the NBA does a lot for example, NBA Cares, and they always have, whether it's disabled children or Make-A-Wish Foundation children or whatever, come to these types of games and interact with these players. They're people that can't get vaccinated, and they're going to spend time with players like LeBron or whoever else that's, you know, giving them these moments. And so what he does protects them as well and allows them to come and, you know, see these games and receive gifts from them and whatnot. So that's where I kind of come over to Kanter's point, where it's like, as the face of the NBA, and for those that haven't seen what Kanter said, he pretty much said, you know, and I'm going to paraphrase here, that LeBron being the face of the league, like, he should be going out and not kind of creating more, especially in this time where you've got crazy things coming out of Kyrie, not creating more kind of abstinence from it, like, which LeBron's comments probably did. Whereas you really want to try, at least I personally believe, try and uplift everybody to go, I've gotten it. The whole Lakers organization have gotten it. We know why we did it. Like, it's good for our family, good for our friends, good for us. And we're going to have a really great NBA season, you know, and I encourage everybody that hasn't done it to, you know, chat with me, you know, chat to whoever you feel like you can, like, you know, get the best advice from, you know, whatever it is, just try and uplift them and give them a bit more like confidence around doing it, as opposed to maybe slightly muddying the waters a little bit further. Not that that was his intention, but as you say, he shied away from it and tried to keep it, distance himself from it.
I'm struggling to understand why he did that, because it sounds like he's legally protecting himself in case he says something which will manipulate or influence someone to do or not do something. But at the end of the day, he's a basketball player. Like he's like it just I'm definitely team Kanter in this regard because like you said, Luca, LeBron got it. He explained why he got it. And then he's like, oh, yeah, but if you don't want to get it, that's fine. Well, we kind of know that and it didn't need to be said. And
Mm.
like you said, it just creates further trepidation and cautiousness from people who might be on the precipice either way. If LeBron came out and just said, yep, I've been vaccinated, the Lakers have been vaccinated, it's all about keeping bodies on the floor in the quest to win a championship. My personal experience was that I thought I should get it. And I feel like it's safe for me and my family. I would advocate for other people to get it too, so we're all safe. And then that's it. It could have been fine. So I do see why Cantor's getting quite enthusiastic, about LeBron, or negatively enthusiastic about what LeBron said. And it is a little bit disappointing for someone with such stature in this league to, I don't know, be shying away from a big moment when he's usually one to grab the bull by the horns.
Yeah, no, I think that's the biggest surprise, I guess. Because they never, I mean, fairly or not, like LeBron is always the player that is questioned on these kind of things. Like they're never really going to go to any other NBA player to really try and dig out these things. But also because LeBron has made it very well known that he gets very enthusiastic about, as you said, political issues, issues of race, anything that comes across the table that he feels like he wants to weigh into. And we see quite how vocal he gets on socials, in press conferences, on court displays, whatever it is. And so just for, yeah, such a massive thing, as you say, like whether he was considering it as protecting himself legally or something like that, like it doesn't even need to be said in all that much detail. Just like this is my experience. It's all good. Like, we want try chase the chip, as you say, like gear it towards like the people that want to hear, your thoughts, around it. And you don't need to like talk to the mass media and mass public around it. Like talk to your peers, your fellow NBA players, at least that.
Mm, mm. Uh, I think that's basically it for that one. I think you've covered that
Mm.
nicely.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess, and yeah, we obviously don't want to cook that subject, but it is something. It like I was saying earlier, it is. I personally think the very last drama to kind of be coming out in this, off season, preseason before we tip off. But
Mm.
excitingly, if we kind of don't look at the drama that's going on, which is really only two things left, we do have a lot of basketball that's being played. And so we want to spend a good chunk of this pod talking about those performances. So I'll let you kick off, Jake. Let's talk about a team that's interested you this preseason based on their performances, and also a particular player. And we might cross over here a little bit so we can unpick some more. But you kick it off for us, and we'll run from there.
No, definitely. I think we're going to cross over on this one, but first and foremost, the team we've already chatted about is the Golden State Warriors. I think Wiggins getting vaccinated in terms of them chasing regular season and postseason success is now the icing on the cake. I think the cherry on top of the icing will be Klay Thompson coming back from a successfully rehab torn Achilles and ACL. If that happens, that's just an oracle dream. But the Golden State Warriors have been chugging along very nicely in the preseason. If I'm not mistaken, I believe they've won all their games. They're 3-0. And in particular, a guy that has been on my radar, your radar, a couple of boys in fantasy's radar as well, it seems, because he's been picked up, is Jordan Poole. Um, I believe it's his third year. So he came into the league in that 1920 lockout season, and he showed some glimpses along with guys like Pascal and a couple of others whose names escape me at the moment. But I remember watching Jordan Poole and just thinking, really, really mechanically sound jumper, good size for a guard, long arms, good athleticism. And if he could just, sit under the tutelage of a guy like Steph Curry and just keep his head down and focus on winning and becoming a better basketball player, he will be a very, very solid guard in this league. And it seems he's beginning to arrive. I want to sort of slow myself down a bit because it is preseason and we do see a lot of outliers and a lot of young guys getting their shine. A good example of that would be Taylor Horton-Tucker last year. He was dropping 30s and just looking like an absolute stud in the preseason, then struggled to even get on the court in the regular season. But I think Jordan Poole will be the exception to that rule. He's at a 30-point game, a 28-point game, and a 17-point game, which I believe he's averaging around 25 a game in the preseason. And the way he's getting his shots is something that I think is definitely sustainable. You know, you've got a guy on the perimeter who's got people like Steph Curry attracting attention, Draymond Green setting screens and being able to pick out passes. You got a big man in Kevon Looney who's going to set hard screens, and then just a plethora of other shooters. You know, Juan Toscano Anderson, Damian Lee, Andre Iguodala. So I think if the Warriors can play their cards right, sort of taper the season so they don't come out too hard and just work up to that sort of Klay Thompson return date, they're a team that I'm really impressed with and probably have the highest rise factor if health and chemistry allows.
Yeah, no. I mean, I echo everything you really said there. I want to, I guess, touch on a few things while the highlights roll here for the game. I really like what I've seen from Jordan Poole. I always actually liked him when the Warriors first drafted him. But in the 2 seasons that he's played, which are both years where Klay wasn't playing because of his injury, he managed to find himself in about 50 games each, 57 in his first year, 51 in his second, averaging about 9 and then 12. So I mean, this is not unheard of, like in 3rd and 4th years where you really see that uptick and, you know, they go from like 9, 12 point per game players to 16, 17, 18 and so on and so forth. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that we see these consistent performances from Jordan Poole. And I personally quite like him. And I've liked him ever since he came to the league. But I guess, as you say, you want to err on the side of caution a little bit when it comes to calling these things a little early. I think it definitely warranted a fantasy pickup and going for a flyer and just, you know, hoping for the best and seeing what happens. But just knowing that there's 2 bodies of work, like through the regular season, where there was very kind of limited offensive, you know, capability in the team, and he wasn't like able to really deliver. I don't know like what changes so drastically in this 3rd year. And then what concerns me is then you have, as you say, like Wiggins is, you know, pretty much that bona fide second option. And then when Klay comes back, if he comes back to even 75, 80% like we've discussed of himself, you know, he's immediately number 2. And so Poole falls pretty far down now the pecking order. Does he get the minutes? Like currently he's averaged about, I'll just pull it up here, about 20 or so minutes a game. I don't know if that really increases like with the kind of roster that they have. So I'm just interested to see like what, I guess, more foundationally happens with the team and how he fits into it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Jordan Poole, it's all going to depend on let me start that again. I think Jordan Poole is going to start at the shooting guard position to enter the regular season. And if he can average somewhere between 15 to 17 points and hold his own defensively, when Klay comes back, that's going to either turn him into the interim starter while Klay's sort of working his body back and getting real court minutes. And then if Klay comes back to his, you know, full capability, which is what we're expecting, Jordan Poole then becomes the rock solid 6th man, Lou Will, J.R. Smith, Jason Kidd in the latter years type player. So that's 25 to 30 minute production there. And I think that if he can keep those minutes and just stay consistent, we're looking at a very, very solid future, you know, championship starter. I wouldn't give him an all-star or anything like that. It's way too early, but he's a very, very solid perimeter guard in today's NBA.
Yeah, and the thing that I do like, though, just thinking about my comments, is that obviously with the departure of Oubre, where they started, you know, Oubre and Wiggins at the 2 and 3, that departure obviously opened up the possibility for Poole to solidify himself into the starting lineup.
Yeah.
The other big kind of just not concern, but just red flag is his career field goal percentage, which is actually sub 40%. He's about a 38% shooter from the field, which is actually pretty abysmal. So he's going to need to make sure that his efficiency is there, even if he is putting up the points.
I think a guy like him being young and having to be a bit of a gunslinger because his minutes have been limited, I'm not really concerned about that because that comes with experience, reps, and training, building up your body, getting that muscle memory. So his mechanics would suggest he's going to be a 50% 2-point, 38% 3-point type of shooter. That's good from the foul line. I haven't seen his free throw percentage, but I'm assuming it's respectable.
High. It's about career 84-85%. So he's a good free throw shooter.
There you go. So when you have I think the free throws really sort of can show where the guy's going to end up. So 84-85% from the line doesn't really correlate to your sub 40 from the field, and that will just come with time.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's probably enough loving on Jordan Poole. But I think we're both very excited to see him as a prospect and what he can put together this season. Speaking of fantasy, who was it? Geordie that picked him up, got in early.
I think it was Josiah, to be honest.
Josiah.
Jordan got Davion Mitchell. So
I see. Okay. Josiah, cheeky. Okay. I know he's going to watch this later, so very nice play there, Josiah.
He's coming for the crown.
Yeah, we like that from you.
Just quietly, this is not a chosen category from this segment, but the Lakers are looking quite nice. They just look really relaxed. Their big man rotation of Dwight and DJ, just for lobs and vertical defense, is looking really nice. And I like the pairing of Kendrick Nunn and Malik Monk. They're just young and sort of spark plugs for that Lakers team who are, hoarding a lot of old veteran players. So, I'm not expecting Lakers to win a lot of games to start off with, but once they work out the kinks, work out the rotation, who works best with who, when they start shortening it a bit, I'm pretty excited for them in the postseason as long as health is there.
Yeah, I really like what I've seen from the Lakers as well, to a certain extent. I really enjoyed watching Malik Monk. His shooting has been... It's just preseason, but he's looked like he's on lock and he's, ready to provide that kind of high volume shooting from the three and, convert at a high clip. So I really like that for them, having, a Danny Green type kind of effect. Maybe not on the defensive end, but at least from the line. The only concern that I have, and like we said, when I sent it to you, it's like it's already started, is Ariza going down and, now he's out for 8 weeks. So I think we are already starting to see the effects of the kind of roster that they've put together, but maybe that's calling it a little too early.
Yeah, hopefully that's just an outlier. And Ariza's a kind of guy where he'll be great to have in the postseason, but I think we can afford to lose him for 8 weeks. I'm keen to see Horton Tucker potentially getting an increased role, Monk, Nunn, soaking up those minutes, because it's easy to forget how deep the Lakers' guard rotation truly is. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Moving on to a team that has interested you. Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, no problem. I've really... Well, let me start by saying this. I'm not sure how real this team is because they versed 2 pretty average teams, but Chicago looking like world beaters, which is why we can't always judge everything off preseason. In particular, I'm loving the fire and ice sort of contrast between Lonzo and Levine. I think the Pelicans at this point are just completely licking their wounds because Lonzo fit perfectly with LeBron. He fit perfectly with Zion. He's fitting perfectly with Levine. He's just that 6'6", scrappy defensive guard who will always find you for the open look, will always push the break. And I don't know, Lonzo and Levine are looking fantastic. And then Caruso being that third guy, just not tasked with doing anything that impressive, just being that sort of super glue. Chicago are looking fantastic. Vooch is very solid as always. He's good for 28 to 30 points. And then you got up and coming youngsters like Patrick Williams the third. The other guys in their roster as well. It's looking pretty sunny in Chicago.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that's quite interesting, and it's kind of a far cry from what we were perhaps suggesting, but we were saying that we did need to see it in action. And again, we're not jumping the gun. We are remaining aware that this is the preseason, so we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. But for one, I'm very happy because I like what I'm seeing from Lonzo. He's on my fantasy team, so anything that he does there is going to be great for me. But yeah, I mean, he had a great game today. Actually, we're looking at the highlights here. He ended up on about 19 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and that was actually on 7 of 9 from the field and 5 of 6 from 3. So
That's huge.
just seeing what I don't want to harp on about Lonzo too much, but I really like what he's done with his game. Like, he's not going to do that all the time. Sometimes he does get a bit streaky, but oh my God, like if he can, convert the 3 at a high clip, I think this is going to be a really exciting team to watch.
This is going to sound a little bit awful, but I think sometimes less is more. And I don't think many people will see it the way I see it. But I genuinely believe if DeMar DeRozan is coming to Chicago with the bench veteran or, token starter veteran that doesn't need the ball in his hands, doesn't need to score 25 to 30 points a night, this team instantly becomes a lot more dangerous and impressive, in my opinion, because the whole reason I had them so low is because I'm thinking about a team with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan who both want the ball, both want to score. But if DeMar's happy just to hit his mid-range jumpers, move the ball along, try and play the best defense he possibly can, this Chicago team becomes a lot more interesting because then you have clear roles. You have LaVine as the franchise star, Lonzo and Caruso being that pass-first defensive backcourt, Vucevic being the Swiss Army knife Slavic big man who can do everything, and then just absolute troops around them, including DeMar DeRozan. So if he does that, I can see them going from a 7 to 10 seed maybe into like the 5 to 7 range, which is quite good for Chicago.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good for Chicago, and I'm loving this. I'm loving this narrative of, and we kind of touched on it. It could have been last week, maybe the week before, around the big franchises are really starting to make splashes. Knicks are relevant again. Chicago's finally looking to be relevant and looking nice. So I really like it from that perspective as well. But as you say on DeRozan, I want to echo that point. I think, as you say, if he becomes a bit of a token starter, probably start him there at the 3, and then heavy. When I say heavy, like get Caruso in and holding down that backcourt and having DeRozan kind of shift throughout the lineup and play with that second unit, play with the main unit, and not look to get his 25 a night, which he's done for so many years, but give up the rock a little. Then I think the Chicago team could be not just this season, but like moving forward, make it clear to LaVine that they're building a winning franchise, which I think is most important here. It's about making sure that LaVine is going to be part of their franchise moving forward. And I know we've spoken about Zach's capability as a winning player, but I think he is on his way there. Maybe not just yet, but the reason why I think he's on his way there is because he's one of the most serious about developing his game, more than I've seen most other NBA players.
Yeah, well, the functionality of the franchise is there now. And when people used to fawn over Zach LaVine and I wasn't in that camp, it was because I was looking at a Chicago Bulls who had literally no one. It was Lowry Markkanen, Wendell Carter Jr., Kobe White, and Zach LaVine. And Zach LaVine was dropping 49 and 50s against the Charlotte Hornets. And everyone's like, oh my God, how good is Zach LaVine? I'm like, bro, he's a fucking first round sweep. Pardon the French.
Yeah.
It wasn't his fault necessarily, but now you got winners and functionality. And I'm happy to give LaVine his flowers because he's taken it to another level even since those games that he was playing. So when you have a guy with a 45-inch vertical who can hit threes and score 50 with a good defensive backcourt and an elite big, Zach LaVine's awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like when you look at it from that, and you always said it as well, like imagine, a Philadelphia trade happened earlier where they, managed to get Ben out there and got LaVine in return. You pretty much kind of echoed that fact there too. Like LaVine instantly becomes, an elite option.
And I wanted to make that clear because I don't hate Zach LaVine. I don't really hate any players. Like if I'm wrong about someone, I'll be the first one to say it. And yeah, I've always liked him. I just didn't understand why people were ready to like crown him, but he's been fantastic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to talk about a team, surprisingly, because it's maybe not the sexiest team to talk about, but I like what they're doing. They're another undefeated preseason run. Let me just get their clips up while I start to chat about them. And that is the Memphis Grizzlies.
Oh
So
yeah.
why are we talking about the Memphis Grizzlies? They're irrelevant, right? Well, I actually think the Memphis Grizzlies are, and this is today's game, or maybe yesterday's game, in fact, sorry, against Charlotte, where they beat them by 30. And what I really liked about this game was they had, let me just pull it up here. They had 6 players in double figures. That was Adams, Jar, Desmond Bain, Jaren Jackson, DeAnthony Melton, and Tyus Jones, all in double figures. And then you have Kyle Anderson and Brandon Clark, who didn't, who played but only put up 6 points. And so, what I'm getting at is I really like what this organization and the team is doing in terms of the personnel that they're building, the kind of democratic kind of style of basketball where we're probably seeing like, Jar go out and do his thing, which he can get his bucket. But now you've got this system where I think they can rely on a lot of different scoring options from the field. And I didn't even mention that Dylan Brooks didn't play, who's their kind of first option on the wing. So I really like the democratic style of basketball that they're building, and I also really like the fact that they have so many options on the offensive end. And I actually think they've always been very stout defensively. They've always been that kind of gritty, grindy, like do the dirty work type team, and that's kind of always persisted in their culture and the way we kind of perceive the Memphis Grizzlies. So not expecting huge things from them this season, but if my predictions serve me right, I'm expecting a play-in and maybe a cheeky playoff appearance, because I'm pretty high on just what Memphis is doing, broadly speaking.
Yeah. Well, you know how much I like Memphis, and one thing that really impressed me last year, among a lot of things, is how they floated in the absence of Jaren Jackson Jr. He was a bit of a just a castaway last year, but people forget his first year. He was an absolute powerhouse, power forward, basically the new era of a forward where you can defend on the perimeter, block shots, shoot threes, athletic, have a bit of a handle. You've got good body movement. And just watching these highlights here, if Jaren Jackson can become a fringe all-star in year 3 with Ja Morant, who's already arrived, then this team becomes really, really frightening and probably a lock playoff team, because then you've got absolute professional producers in Steven Adams, Desmond Bain, Xavier Tillman, both of the last 2 of which have only been in the league for a season. Dylan Brooks, as you mentioned, who's a seasoned veteran as well. The list goes on. So drafting, front office management, roster construction, salary deals, Memphis are just tick, 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 and I'm very excited to see what they can do this season.
Yeah, no, I'd echo everything there. And as you say, like I was literally just thinking about the depth of this squad. And as you say, it runs all the way through, as in with Tillman, with Culver. I forgot that he was there. So yeah, I really like what they're doing, and I'm really excited to see what kind of season they put up here, because they've always just managed to, like, on the fringe, stay relevant. So I'm excited to actually see them put out hopefully one of their best seasons in a while.
Definitely. And if there's nothing left on Memphis, could I quickly switch over to something else?
Yeah, hit me.
We've had some Tyler Hero sightings, Luca. So
Have we?
first season he was a firecracker in the bubble at least, and he seemingly arrived on the scene and punched his ticket into that sort of elite starter, future all-star type player. And then last year, whether it be getting his Instagram fitness model pregnant, wearing jewelry and just trying to win the runway rather than score 15 to 20 and become the best player he can be. Um, he's seemingly arrived again. He played today and he absolutely lit the floor up. I'm just getting up his stats now. If I can find it, yeah, 24 points, 6 from the free throw line, 4 of 7 out of 3, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, and that's more the Tyler Hero we were expecting. So I think what's happening here is that bubble run, especially for Miami and Lakers, it really showed its negative dividends in the season last year. The fact they only had 70 days off and straight back into it. Lakers had that absolute clusterfuck of a season where AD couldn't stay healthy. Schroeder was hit and miss. Montrezl Harrell couldn't even stay on the floor because he wasn't performing. And I think the Miami Heat were also victim of that. So I guess what I'm asking is, are you buying the Tyler Hero, stock, or is he just, one hit wonder?
I think he's one more shit tattoo away from me just, completely removing him from any relevance in the NBA.
Oh my God.
But on a serious note, I've always been a fan of Tyler Hero. When he was drafted, I thought he was a very kind of I was high on him. I always told people that fantasy year, I was like, Tyler Hero should get drafted. And I've always had the faith that he's going to be someone that can get his bucket. And he showed that pretty early on, I think. But where I think what works for him now really well is the fact that now I think when you play with less pressure and less expectation, you are able to deliver your best performances. Because now that I think maybe not, but maybe I'm just perceiving it this way, the kind of microscope is off him for the time being, in the sense of people know what he is, what he's delivered, and people also know Miami and what Miami is capable of. And now they've constructed a team that I think really resonates with that finals image of Miami. When they came back the season post going to the finals, they didn't look like an elite playoff team, you immediately counted them out. You knew they weren't going anywhere. But now they've really built a roster that meets that expectation. And I think where that benefits Tyler is that he's able to just perform within that system. He's got a lot of great players, like literal superstars around him, and some really good veteran presence, and that's going to open up the floor for him and allow him to get buckets and create, as we just saw. So yeah, I'm buying it. I don't think he's a one-hit wonder, but I do think that he's the type of player that is going to need these kind of systems to allow for him to perform. I think if you kind of dropped him in to a team like Houston, for example, where you'd expect him to maybe do what we expect Jaylen Green to do, we'd likely not see, a similar outcome or what you expect from Hero, I guess, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Jaylen Green versus Tyler Hero. I think I'm a little bit higher than you are, but I get where you're coming from. I want to see what happens this season. This will probably be the deciding factor on whether Tyler Hero is a future All-Star, or whether he's just like you say, fit into the elite system role player who can hit threes and put the ball on the floor. So
I feel like
that being,
yeah, I personally feel like, I don't know if maybe he might make an All-Star or two, but I don't know if I'm not high on him to the point where I think he's going to be a bona fide All-Star, but I think he is someone that will get you 17 to 22, whether that puts you in All-Star discussions. I'm not sure, but I think he's going to be a championship piece.
it's crazy because if he hits 17 to 22, he may not be an All-Star, but he's not a regular starter either. So he's in that fringe Mike Conley type range. I'm not saying he will ever be as good as Mike Conley, because Mike Conley really sort of slugged it out in the West against some really top teams. But 17 to 22 points a game is no mean feat.
That's what I think his peak will be. But
that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
That's pretty fair, I think. And it's wild to think that Tyler Hero was a sticking point in the James Harden deal a season ago.
Yeah.
So that's pretty wild as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point that you bring up, because I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, and just quietly, Alperen Sengun is doing me wonders. He had 9.6 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. I'll take that in 18 minutes.
I'm actually we spoke about it because we spoke about what teams we're interested in, and we were both really high on Houston, like just from what they're doing. And I'm excited for your boy because I know you took a flyer on him, but I also think that Houston are actually going to be really interesting to watch. Like even if they don't win, I think they're a team that I'm going to want to tune in to watch.
Agreed. Like this highlight, they lost by less than 10 to an Eastern Conference finalist potentially. Again, preseason, of course, but every player on the floor is solid. I'm watching Jaylen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. just absolutely step back and drill threes on people's heads. And then you got the Tice Sangoon sort of front court, which is pretty interesting. Both versatile big men. So yeah, they're a very cool side, is what I'm trying to say.
Not to name Christian Wood there either. So
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. So there you go.
like I actually I forgot Tice had gone over to the Rockets, and I really like that. I really like Tice actually.
I think he's a
cheeky.
EuroLeague MVP if he played there right now. Like he'd be by far and away the best player in EuroLeague.
Yeah, he's that kind of player. Hey.
Yeah, he's so solid.
Yeah, no, it's been do you have any other takes on the preseason there? Pretty much like my kind of main things. I mean, we can talk about the Nets beating the Bucks, but it's not really anything too interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wanted to mention the Nets, but like you just said, we've spoken about them at nauseum. They're just looking like a multi-time NBA championship team. You know, it's just going to be health and just clearing up the Kyrie nonsense. You know, I don't even have them lower if he doesn't play. I just want to know if he's going to play or not, and I'm sure they do too. And just move on and get some clarity and work out who's going to be on the floor and who's going to be performing.
That's pretty much it. Hey, just
Yeah.
can you let us know? Because we'll move on. You know, if you're not getting vaccinated, then we'll just work something out.
Again, look, I don't want to mention my dudes, but just quickly, Jalen Green is looking so nice, man. Like,
Yeah.
fuck, he's looking so solid. I can't wait.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of Jalen Green, speaking of rookies, I don't have the highlights up right this instant, and I can get them up, but you probably wouldn't see them until the end of the game. Cam Thomas,
Oh,
he's
wow.
looking silky smooth. I mean,
He's looking crazy.
he didn't put up his big points, which, as expected, Durant and Harden took, and you know, Joe Harris, Blake, they were all in the game. Patty, they took some significant time away, but he came onto the court. Like, obviously nobody cares about winning in the preseason, so he came on at the end and he drilled like that cheeky little step back after the I'm not going to call it a push off because it was clean. He didn't push off, but like, you know, baiting the flop, creating space, drilling that shot, and then coming back and hitting that three.
That
Man,
was crazy. That was crazy. That flop was so funny. The guy like went from the 3-point line onto the baseline. I thought he might get a tech for doing that, to be honest, but it was a crazy move by Cam Thomas.
yeah, no, he's looking like I actually think they've got a future star in Cam, and so I'm like, and that's crazy for Brooklyn to think. Like you've got your all-star, you know, three-headed snake. If you know Kyrie drama doesn't settle, if he has to move on, you can very easily move Harden to the one, which has already happened, and you can feasibly get Cam in at a starting two. And I think, but like aside from that, like, and moving on to, you know, more of the future past those guys, or maybe even as trade bait to try and, you know, create some more, not that they need more weapons, but to build around KD and Harden. That they're just, I can't believe they drafted him, you know, in the 20s and got a player like that.
Well, unintentionally, we've just created a nice little comparison. Rank these players: Cam Thomas, Tyler Hero, Jordan Poole.
That is a really good point, and that is a really great conversation to have.
Yeah, that's
I'm
pretty interesting, right?
I'm gonna say, do you mind if I take it away since you asked the
Yeah,
question?
yeah, yeah. Of course, I haven't got an answer ready.
I think if I was looking at those three guys, I'm gonna go with one who is already shown me what he's capable of, and I've seen glimpses of it, and I trust that it's there, and that's Tyler Hero.
Yeah.
Just because I know for certain that if he can kind of just build a little bit on what we've already seen, he's already fringe all-star. So I'm convinced that at the moment, Tyler Hero it would be my number one. Between Poole and and Cam Thomas is kind of hard because there's two things. One, I've seen what Poole has done in the preseason. I also know what his body of work is for a few years, for a couple of years in the league. And then Cam is this complete unknown, but has just stepped onto the scene, and every game that he has played, he has delivered. Obviously, this most recent game, he only had 7 points, but granted, he only played 8 minutes. But what's interesting, in 8 minutes, he jacked up 10 shots. So he's the kind of player that's not afraid to just go out there, no matter who's on the floor, and shoot his shots. And I think that's going to serve him very, very well in terms of just he's already got that swagger about him. He's already got the confidence in his game to do that on a team like the Nets with Harden and Durant. So it's a hard one for me, but I think I'm still going to have to go with Jordan Poole because I just trust the body of work and players that I've already seen. But I think in the long run, if I was to do a predictive question, I actually kind of like Cam as probably the biggest all-star of the three. But that could be a red hot take.
No, I'm going to answer it predictively, and this is going to come as a bit of a gobsmack maybe, but it's hard for me to know whether Cam will be better than Jordan Poole, only because, like you say, we have more of a body of work, and all signs do indicate that Cam Thomas will be the best player out of the three. But until I see him in the NBA regular season for at least one season, I have to put him at 3 for now, which is probably unfair because I've disqualified him from this comparison. But for now, I'll put him at 3. But long term, I'm probably going to go Jordan Poole 1, Cam Thomas 2, Tyler Hero 3.
Yeah.
And that sounds crazy because, like we were discussing before, Tyler Hero could be an all-star. But that just speaks to the talent of Jordan Poole and Cam Thomas, in my opinion. I genuinely feel Jordan Poole is a light version. Don't get this misunderstood. But he has the best of Steph and Clay in the sense of he can hit shots, but he's a bit of a bigger body, rangy like Clay, but that quickness like Steph. So it wouldn't surprise me if he was like a 22, 23 point scorer with 3 or 4 rebounds, 3 or 4 assists, which is pretty special. Slightly above Tyler Hero, maybe not as an individual offensive threat, but overall. So yeah, I really like Jordan Poole, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's the best player.
Yeah, no, I really like that. But I completely agree with you on one thing, in that Tyler Hero at 3, I actually think it speaks to the talent of both those guys, because when you consider what Tyler Hero is as a player, I think you kind of immediately think of what his ceiling is. Personally, I think his peak and ceiling is in that range of 17 to 22. And again, that's, a championship piece, great player, fringe all-star, maybe even a few all-stars. But I think when I just watch them play, just when I look at, the bodies, the physical capabilities, how they look when they're on the court, I always tend to go for those guys that have that physical presence about them, where I think Tyler kind of caps out a little bit for me. And that's not just me saying he's a scrawny white guy, but maybe it is sure, in a bit more words and beating around the bush a little bit.
I can't wait to watch this clip again when Tyler Hero's averaging 28 points a game.
Imagine. Holy crap.
It could happen.
If he gets to averaging 28 points for the Miami Heat, I think I'll get his tattoo across my chest as well.
Please stop making claims your body can't check.
It's vaulted, isn't it?
Yeah, please don't do that. But no more from me, Luca, to be honest with you, unless you had anything else.
No, I think that's pretty much it. I think there's a bit more to go with the preseason. So I think what we're going to do is probably look at doing some 7 minutes or less segments on some of these games, and then bring in some deeper analysis into next pod. But yeah, what we're super, super excited for is the season to start back up. We're excited to get fantasy going. We're going to integrate fantasy into these podcasts. I know that's been a very popular request and demand by our viewers. So I think that's going to give us a bit of a competitive edge in content, and we're excited to bring it to you. We'll just have to dance around, giving out any actual info that we're kind of sitting on. So we'll work out how to do that. But yeah, we're really looking forward to the season, and the content's just only going to get better from here.
No, definitely. And it's crazy to think that we haven't really unleashed yet in terms of like our full NBA analysis, because no games have been played. We've really had to not make it up as we go along, but produce content to prepare for the actual war that is the NBA, in terms of how we follow it and how we like to talk about it. So I can't wait for the next game where LeBron has 4 turnovers and you're ready to tell me that he's playing like a dickhead.
He's washed. He's washed.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, like, anytime LeBron has more than 5 turnovers, I send Jake the box score. I'm just like, tell me about it.
Oh god. But I'm really excited for all the headlines and the storylines and the drama that is predictably going to happen, because there's always something in the NBA. So yeah, Luka, I'm very keen for that, and thank you to everyone that's tuned in, and we'll watch this after the fact.
Exactly. And I think I can't remember what I was going to say just then, but I was going to say something around our content, but never mind it. I'll remember next time. But thank you, everybody, for joining in. LeBron is always washed. Thank you for everybody who joined Issa with outrageous comments. We're just going to move past those.
All good.
But yeah, thanks for following us. I'm going to allow Jake to do our social plug just here at the end before we call it a wrap.
No problem. As always, we're on Instagram, YouTube, as you can see, and Apple Podcasts primarily. Instagram's at the Fourth Quarter Pod. YouTube is also the Fourth Quarter Pod. And Apple Podcast is the Fourth Quarter Podcast, which makes a lot of sense. So, guys, honestly, a subscription to YouTube, a follow on Instagram, a 5-star review on that podcast really helps us. We've built a very strong foundation so far with a couple of 100 followers on Insta, about 40 subscribers, and we've got a sort of regular crew that likes to listen to us, which we really appreciate. All good things can't be rushed, but any support and following to boost our numbers would be appreciated. We do this because we love to do it. We're not in it for some ulterior motive, which is hopefully why you can see our content is so pure and enjoyable. And yeah, that's basically it. Can't wait for the next video, and we'll go from there.
Thanks for the plug, Jake. And I remember what I was going to say, but we'll talk about it offline, and maybe we'll
post. No problem.
Maybe we'll post something on the socials for you.
So
all right. Thanks, everyone.